time, but yeah, okay. All right. Well, just one thing about these fairy tales, we got just a few more left here, but the thing that I most like about them is their gentleness and yet their depth. I mean, they're just incredibly deep. And if you wonder where they come from, I mean, they just spring up. They're like, there was two words for truth. One is aletheia, and that's the absence of forgetting. When we're born, we forget everything, but the soul remembers it all. And she was born with us, so she remembers everything. But the ego consciousness, because I think it forgets everything, because it's not. It is no longer. It is trying to separate from nature to get an Archimedean point, and I think to come out of the participation mystique of being in nature, it needs to have this forgetting, and then the other word for truth is that which sprouts up from the earth of itself, and this is hello, Angelique, too. Welcome. By the way, Angelique, I don't know if you have, are you on our email address or not? You may be, but if you're not, just put it in the chat, and we'll get you texts, etc.
Hello, Craig. Yes, I am on your email list. That's how I figured it out. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Can you tell us where you're from, Angelique? Just so
yes,
we can
of course. I'm sorry, I'm on holiday, so it's not very easy to use my camera where I am, but I am in Greece at the moment. I am from Greece, but I live in the UK. Okay. I am a psychotherapist, an existential psychotherapist, but with quite a bit of a Jungian, archetypal Jungian direction in my work, and I'm working with dreams. So I consider myself very lucky having found your group.
Well, thank you very much, Angelique. And we're all kind of just people. I mean, in my own case, I think it is just it's an ancient wisdom, that we're trying to reconnect with. And I do it mainly, and this idea of what Annette does and what Gary does here is I really do it through what I call the blessed hour of going through my own images. There's one thing Jung says that sort of guides me. Any sorrow or grief that we experience can be dissolved in an image. It can be dissolved in a dream. And I think that what the dreams do to me is they are, well, first they made me comfortable in my own skin. I was a puer eternus who was disembodied and everything. So I don't say I've achieved that yet, but I'm working towards it. But anyway, just to get back to these fairy tales, I mean, the idea of the fairy tales is just this gentle, there's no aspect of dogma in it. It's all just unconscious images, that are von Franz says they are the most authentic thing that we have. There is no more authentic unconscious material than the fairy tale or the folk tale. It's called Märchen in German. But anyway, so we'll get started where we left off on last time, which is the woman who became a spider. This woman who achieved these, through, she falls in love with the head, which is the animus, and she's very happy with her head, her animus vision. And yet her father wants her to marry a human boy, And she's going to go through probably why she wanted to marry her animus instead. And then later, now she's going to be marrying the moon god, but it's sort of we don't know what's going to happen, but if she marries the moon god, but the Spider Woman saves her because the Spider Woman apparently is the one who establishes the cycles of the moon. She has the power to take away the power of the moon god, and I think one of the really unforgettable images, and remember, this is an Eskimo tale, or it's one of the Inuit peoples of Western Alaska on the coastal sides, and or the Aleuts, who are on the islands, but is this image where when they go up to the heaven and they look down through his little hole, they look into the dwelling places of every home, and they can hear the moon god, can hear all every heart in every home, even though they don't really love the moon god. They just want him to give them what they lack. So there's a strange aspect of that. But anyway, we're just going to pick up where we left off, like last time, and that was the tendency to marry ahead is generally has to do. This is von Franz. Everything she says in here is just, you can't edit it out. It's so good and so deep, But if you marry ahead, it generally is due to a father complex, and she prefers a head to a human probably had to do with her father. Now, she says, like in Snow White, it wasn't the father that caused the problem. It was the mother's animus. So it is the negative animus in the mother, the negative male aspect in the mother that caused the problem in Snow White. So that problem usually manifests itself a little bit differently. And but if it's it could also be the father's anima that causes a problem, or the mother's animus. They could count for the daughter being driven out of life. In either case, the father complex or the mother's animus, which causes her to remarry ahead and drives her out of life, either way. But now she's going to mention this wonderful thing but why should it always be blamed on the parents? And here's a little essay she does. Since humans have existed, we all have every one of our parents have a certain amount of negative unconscious in them, and their parents did too. And so this legacy is passed down generation by generation, this negative aspect of the parents' unconscious. And she says this may be just the general human condition. This doesn't happen in bears, and this doesn't happen in tigers or any wolves. It only happens in humans. So it's maybe the general human condition having to do with the fact of consciousness, not consciousness which is separated from nature. Bears are every bit as conscious as we are. More. They can sense, they're tied in with intuition and sense, all four functions, so they don't have an inferior function. But they also, Jung says, are more moral than us because they follow their inner law, and we don't follow our inner law at all. The whole idea of what all this dream work and everything that we are trying to do is to follow what is our inner law and how do we get in sync with it, But anyway, this idea of this negative unconscious, and then we are going to pass it down to our children. And So everybody's parents had this conscious and unconscious attitude, which could affect their children. But can't you free yourself from that? You know, if parents are, she says, if the parents are in connection with their unconscious, the pressure on the children might be less, but even so, no human can escape the conditions of being influenced by their parents' negative unconscious. Now, but in the same family, one girl might be more influenced by the father's anima and the other by the mother's animus. And it depends on the original disposition of the child. And only a child, one child has a strong father complex, and the other one is more fascinated by the figure of the mother than by the father. And a daughter who's fascinated by the figure of the father more than by the mother. Some are fascinated by the figure of the mother, but in their youth, they tend to more to the fate of being separated from life, you know, slightly off from life. And the only way out is to take responsibility for what one is. This is something Hillman stresses all the time. You know, he says, I don't care whatever happened to you. How is that going to affect the next 5 minutes? And, you know, he says, you need to take responsibility, you know, for what one is the way von Franz says, you know, because Gerhard Dorn says it's more instructive to know not who you are, but what you are. What is your inner law? Not who is your biography, you know, is a different question. So but it takes an enormous amount of effort to interpret the curse or the chain of events which lead from one generation to another. And you can see it expressed in dreams. And usually it's expressed in that you must redeem the father or must redeem the mother. And if you redeem the father or redeem the mother in your own life, you redeem the sins of your father or mother in your own life that they were not at fault on necessarily, because they might have got it from their parents and just were never achieved consciousness in their lives. So they were not driven so much by consciousness, but by unconsciousness. And so everything they did seemed to have no control, like, you know, someone who has alcoholism, you know. I mean, how do you control yourself when you have an addiction? So this one, she talks about a man whose father never stood up against his mother's moods and was under domination of his wife. And then he marries, and the same battle starts over again. And he dreams several times that he should redeem his dead father. That is, what his father had not done, he should now do. And he had the responsibility of not continuing the curse. Otherwise, his children would have the same problem. So he had to stop the process of the ancestral curse, which in dreams is expressed by saying you have to redeem your ancestors. And the one who's been conscious is the one who has stopped the curse that went on through the generations. Now, you know, this is expressed in the Emerald Tablets by when Hermes goes up to the highest heaven. When he comes down through the 7 heavens, he debeards all of the curse of the 7 planets that has over him. And when he returns to the earth and his strength is perfected, this is such an important image for me personally, returning to the earth. You know, and this was really what the Spider Woman was supposed to do. I mean, the Eskimo girl was supposed to do. The benevolent self was the Spider Woman in heaven who saved her from the moon god. And then she was going to allow her to return to the earth. But she says, when you get down to the earth, you must open your eyes immediately or you'll remain a spider. You know, and so she didn't do it. that and the aspect that she took the wrong way when the animus told her not go way to heaven, but go the way of the earth, was an issue, but in her not see, that all those images that she saw in that heaven, if she had come back and been a human girl, she could have instructed people so much and given them a perspective of shamanic, priestess that would have been very helpful to her people. But instead, she became a spider. And so, as mentioned before, one has to consider the inborn disposition of the child, who either accepts or rejects parental influence. Like the girl who wanted to learn Greek, and her father said, "You're not capable of learning Greek." And what she could have said was, "I'll show you." But instead, she had a natural lameness before he even said that. And so it's very important for parents, especially fathers, when the animus first shows up in the daughter, it tends to be unyielding and fantastical. But that's a process, and you should show discretion in what you say about when it first manifests, both in boys or girls, because what they bring up is going to be ridiculous. But you shouldn't mock them or disparage them. You should show discretion when that happens. And yeah, go ahead.
Greg?
Yes.
I was just coming through me was, do you know what is always so hard is that actually somebody can only ask the question themselves when they're ready. People can say a million things to you or try to make you open your eyes. But if people don't do it, it won't happen, isn't it?
When she describes the adolescent who's just crazy, she was describing me. Oh. And and I knew that at that stage I was exactly that blindness. Nothing anyone said to me would have made any difference. You have to learn by yourself. It is
same in my 20s, definitely.
Yeah, especially this is something that I forget where we read it, but the intuitive, I'm an intuitive, that when the sensate learns something, they learn it, they know it, they don't have anybody to tell them, but it takes them a long time. Parsifal, they said of him, he learned slowly but well. So it sounds to me like he was a sensate, and once he knows it, he knows it, where the intuitive says, well, I knew that 20 years ago, but then the intuitive never takes any action. He doesn't. And the way that I learned is through the sensate way. The only way I could learn as an intuitive was to have my intuition boat crash on the rocks and be forced to become a sensate. And at that point, then I've learned the lesson. It isn't just, some type of thing that thrills me. It has to some way come back to the earth and come down to the earth.
I also quite a shock, I can tell you.
Yes, I know. It is. It is. And we're gonna that last. There's going to be a little dream we hear in a second that's going to tell us, and it reminded me of Tim's dream that he had shared with us a couple of days ago. That was is about someone like myself who needed to have my intuitive boat crash on the rocks before I learned anything, And so anyway, the girl in our story, they tell about the Eskimos' strange idea of the moon god who's male, He's another beautiful animus figure, like the head was. Azine had a wonderful dream of a head named Robin. It was Robin Williams, but I think the Robin had to do with something like spring, you know, an animus that had something to do with rebirth, you know. But anyway, the moon god is another beautiful animus figure, but different from the head in the sea, because it is it's the god of the tribe, not a god to whom the Eskimos show much love, but they are prey to him for luck in hunting. Now, she's going to talk about the very mysterious aspect of is the goddess of fertility male or female? Well, it can be really either. There's also a goddess Sedna who lives at the bottom of the sea in the Eskimo myth, and they have to go and take lice out of her hair or heal her wound so that the whales and the seals will show up. And now here's something I'd never heard before, but is so interesting, is in Egypt, the opposite occurs. The earth is male, and the earth. I gotta get a picture of it because it's really beautiful. Newt and the male principle. Here is a kind of a diagram here of it. Okay, well, now Geb is the earth principle, is a male god, and you can see him there lying down on the earth. It was also angelique. There was a Greek, the Greeks, when they wanted to know something, they would often lie on the ground and put their ear to the earth. Why is it that Newt is the sky? You can see all the stars on her body, and Geb is the earth. And it is because in Egypt, what is concrete is ideas. Is the most striking thing is they believe in mortality, but immortality of life after death, but it has to do with the preservation of the body. And they tried to guarantee immortality by immortalizing the body. And in other civilizations, immortality is just a concept or a vision. But in Egypt, it was concretely related to the preservation of the body. And so this psychological reversal is expressed in earth taking on the male principle, because it's earth is, matter now is conceptual. The concepts are concrete, but what is not concrete are moods, feelings, sentiment, love. In Egypt, they have a spiritual connotation. And so the feminine aspect of eros is now spiritual, not concrete. Where the woman in Europe would be the earth principle, or not woman, but the feminine energy. I mean, you have to remember, feminine energy is far older than humans. It shaped our bodies, but we experience it in the unconscious sometimes as the earth principle, because that's where our bodies came from. The male principle in Europe, or the masculine principle, tends to be the one of meaning. Earth also is the place where all images come from the feminine. The feminine is where all the images of dream come from. And then the masculine aspect of the logos aspect, in its positive aspect, is supposed to provide the meaning. So you have the image And then the ego that receives the image has two responsibilities to the image. Well, there's really three, according to Robert Johnson. But one is to be its medium of expression in the world. In other words, you draw it, you do something to make it concrete. So now the image, which longs for the light of ego attention, is suddenly now concrete. You've made it into a drawing, and you've colored it. You've put feeling into it, and you try to get all four functions into it, And then with the logos principle, you walk around it and throw words at it, and you try to extract the meaning. And it's not an easy process, but eventually something comes through, something shines through and resonates, some word, it usually has to come from someone else. But now what is really interesting too is when Alexander the Great, invaded Egypt and brought all these Neoplatonists and Gnostic people down into, all these wonderful mystical Greek philosophies that we have down into Egypt. Now they're meeting all these chemists who are trying to preserve bodies, and through the philosophy, the Greek mystical philosophies, not Plato or Aristotle, but the mystical philosophies of Greece, and the ones that were really, Peter Kingsley writes a lot about, Empedocles, Parmenides, Pythagoras, the ones who preceded he's really against, or saying that the mystical tradition of Greece was somewhat obscured by Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. But when that pre-Socratic condition philosophy came into Egypt, and its wonderful knowledge of chemistry, you got alchemy.
I guess, yes, if I may say, I guess that happened because Socrates and Plato was among the philosophers who were starting to not have the best connection with the body.
Yes, that is wonderful, actually.
That's the connection with the matter. And what you just said before, because I am a researcher on the Eleusinian mysteries, the idea was that the rain comes as masculine and penetrates the earth. So during the rituals of the mysteries, they were using this expression of ie kie. So you throw the rain and she receives. And that was the union, the sacred union, being repeated for the initiates during the mysteries.
Kind of the water of life, or some renewal aspect. That's so beautiful, Angelique. Anybody, especially, just break in at any time, because I'm sort of just giving an outline of it, and hopefully I don't go over time, but then we'll have an open discussion. That is beautiful, Angelique. I'd like to hear more. I really my acquaintance with the Eleusinian mysteries, and it's from primarily Peter Kingsley, or who is that? Carl Kenry, or I can't remember his last name. But anyway, so that is just an interesting aspect, this Egyptian reversal. And now she goes on. This is just beautiful. It is lovely. It's a little bit off topic, but she says, what would it mean if the fertility principle was masculine instead of feminine? If the nature principle was masculine and active, there'd be a sort of this compensatory passivity towards nature. And it happens in one of two ways. I mean, the first way, the more normal way, is this active hunter to the active hunter. The forest or the sea with its animals is an analogy or a simile for the mother or the feminine principle, because he penetrates nature, he enters it and gets nourishment there, and it is very fickle. But the thou in nature for him, for the hunter, is a woman, and he has a feeling of active. He has to be active in this when he goes into the nature, and he both loves and hates nature as a woman. He regards it sometimes as a trickster, as cruel, and as unreliable. And we hear from Esther Harding in her Moon Mysteries book that the idea is that the sun is not cyclic. You know, there's nothing cyclic about the sun. You know, and men tend to have that sort of solar. They're more conscious of their solar side, where the woman tends to be more conscious of her moon side, which is the cyclical side. And so the idea of her being not cyclic, you think when she's cyclic and she's not like the sun, which is not cyclic, you say, well, the sun is very reliable. The moon is not. You know, the moon comes and goes. And, you know, sometimes when the moon, the new moon forms, the people would say the king is reborn, you know, because they weren't really sure it would come back, you know. It was pretty hard to keep track of calendars sometimes in these, you know, they would try, but the
Mr. Craig?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but the moon is always complete. It depends from us. We are the ones who are looking, but she's always complete. Yes,
she is complete, but you know, we don't, anyway, I'm not an expert on the moon, but I will just say that she is very mysterious. You know, she waxes and wanes, and to someone who has no idea why she waxes and wanes, it is a totally complete mystery. And so what they do is they project some archetypal explanation onto this waxing and waning of the moon, and to the sun, which does always appears in its same aspect, you know. So anyway, I'm not trying to get too deep in that, but that's very good, Denise. Thank you so much. I'd like to, maybe you can give us, I'll just take a couple more minutes finishing this. Maybe I'll jump ahead a little bit, just so we can get to the good parts. Let me go to some of the ones about the spider woman. So the girl gets into the play of opposites between the moon and the spider woman, the feminine and the masculine, when she goes to this heaven. And the moon is the masculine aspect, and the spider woman is in her little house, is the feminine aspect. And she is benevolent, and the moon god here is the moody character, the one who is not reliable. And the spider woman is a symbol of the self for this Eskimo woman, and is a stronger figure than the moon. She can depotentiate him by throwing whale skin at him, you know. And this theme belongs of the girl cannot escape back to Earth in spite of this benevolent spider woman helping the girl against the destructive animus, who's now represented by the moon god, and before was the head The girl cannot escape back to Earth because of her inborn weakness and her inability to open her eyes. Now, she's going to give several examples of this that has happened in her own practice. And it is that a lot of people in the process of the individuation are kind of sleepy lethargy and unaware of what's going on. But so we have to keep this in mind. Now let's just get some examples here that she had of this, because we don't have much time left here. So one is this woman who had the dream of she says that she has some people come to her from France, and they have a dream that says the sea flooded the whole Lion. Graves opened up and corpses rolled around and became alive. And she says either one could be a sign, like the girl in the Eskimo fairy tale, who one took the wrong path. The animus told her to go take the earth path. She took the heaven path. And the other is that she didn't open her eyes when the self, the Spider Woman, told her to when she got down. And there are signs of dreams of patients that will tell him that. And now here's one. It's a dream of Queen Elizabeth. The dreamer was in a strange medieval town where a wedding took place, Queen Elizabeth. And she was milling around among the excited crowds in the streets. A long procession came, headed by 4 black horses and then 4 brown horses. And their 4 parts and tails of the horses were like roosters. And afterwards, the sun god came, and he was followed by Queen Elizabeth, who was a supernatural goddess. And then came a number of elephants and lions and so on. Now, the dreamer was back in the crowd and had to find a place much farther ahead if she wanted to see the procession. But she realized she had not cleaned her shoes, and she must do so. Okay, so this, but then before that she could do it, an infantile shadow figure comes up, diverts her attention, and the dream ends. Okay. All right, now she's going to go through this tremendous activity in the unconscious of the wedding of a queen, you know, and that she cannot find her place at once shows some weakness, but it's not fatal. And then there was a healthy image that she realizes she must clean her shoes, a very healthy thing. What is really important is that she has a clean standpoint, that she would not lie or cheat, because this girl was a big liar. And she would take her analysis seriously and would take everything that came towards her in her life seriously. Now, those words hit me pretty hard too. Do we take our analysis seriously? Do we take everything that comes up to us in life seriously? Or do we have this infantile figure, this child who diverts your attention from the fact that she has to clean her shoes? This reminded me of your dream, Tim, where you had to clean your self before you went into some ritual play. And here the dream fades. There's no solution. So the dream says, what goes wrong is this infantile. What was wrong in her? She didn't take things seriously. And she says she's dependent on everybody. She complains about her landlady, but she's strongly influenced by her. Her former analyst, she tells her she's very happy with von Franz, and her former analyst tells her, oh no, get away from her. And so she quits, and then she takes up anthroposophy and gets a cancer phobia. And then she writes von Franz a letter saying she was stupid to leave. She wants to come back, but she never comes back. So it's this petering out process in her dream, played out almost exactly in life through her infantile aspect. And see, this was the aspect which von Franz said was so prevalent in Eskimo dreams, is that they end like, okay, she's supposed to open her eyes when she gets down at the end of the rope. but she doesn't, and she becomes a spider. That's the end of the fairy tale. It was sort of like this one, where she's supposed to go wash her shoes so she can see the procession and the queen, but her attention gets diverted and she never does see it, you know. So there's this aspect of that the ego does not have the strength to stand up to the serious, to taking any of these things seriously. So the dangerous element is, it was the shoes that she, it's a small point, but the fact that the infantile element stopped her from doing it was what she said was similar to the Eskimo girl not opening her eyes when she got down at the end. And and Jung mentions a dream where a child, a little girl, dreams of Jack Frost, touches her tummy, and Jung said the pathological element here, and this is often what shows up in patients, is that they show no reaction. Even if they had woken up and frightened or just said, and then I woke up, it would be equivalent to a reaction. But Jack Frost, who's personified winter, comes and touches her tummy, and she has no effect. She just there was no lysis. And Jack Frost is a demon of the cold who should definitely inspire fear in everybody. And but she doesn't take him seriously. So, here's Jack Frost, he's pretty scary, the personified winter, and here's a picture of him with a little girl about probably ready to touch her tummy, and is she going to react with fear, or is she going to have no reaction? That's the question. You often hear, and she says, all these people who tell you this fabulous archetypal material, and it doesn't affect them at all. In other words, it can't be integrated. They can't. The archetypal. He also mentions, Jung mentioned, that people who to take these images literally can't understand the symbolic aspect of these dreams are also somewhat like the Eskimo girl. They're never going to achieve individuation if they can't realize the symbolic nature of these images, that they don't have to do with anything literally in life 99% of the time. And she says there was this woman who fastened everything together with paper clips. She asked her why she did, and she says, one day, a window may be open and might blow in and cause confusion. And that was highly symbolic. The wind is the spirit of the unconscious, and one day it may blow in through her window and she would never get out of her mental confusion. So she's trying to protect herself with paper clips, pinning everything down. She's caught in this narrow-minded, limited attitude about everything, and it's a defense mechanism. So such people are caught by rationalism, which von Franz calls the revenge of the father archetype. Materialism is the revenge of the mother archetype. Stinginess is another thing, and that's the idea of the materialist. Is mistaking the wonderful image of the mystery of being alive at all, that we take it for granted. It's just there's no miracle here. I'm alive, but this is the way it is. Well, how are you alive? What, like Rabbi Zusia, every time he realized he's alive, he faints in disbelief. That's the way you should react, because it is an absolutely unbelievable miracle that you are here right now and that you are seeing all of these things in color. don't take it for granted. You know, I mean, that's the fact that you don't get, so that the idea now she'll mention, and I'll just finish with this because we only got 5 minutes before we want to just have everybody participate openly here. It is a dream of a woman who had to deal with, she needed imaginal creativity in her life. Okay. Now, do you know what imaginal, first of all, has to do with expanding consciousness. You know, the idea of the imaginal is, Henri Corbin and everybody, the idea of in alchemy is the imaginal is the expansion of consciousness through living the symbolic life. Okay, and the creative aspect is being a conduit for that aspect in your own life, and then in integrating it and bringing it down to earth, assimilating it and bringing it into your life and making it an essential part of your life. These images and being their conduit in both the medium of expression and providing meaning, and you create the philosopher's stone, which is a very mysterious process, but is absolutely necessary to to shift the center of gravity of ego away from three-dimensional literalness to the symbolic center. You know, that place that permeates, and what the philosopher's stone provides, and also the Ark of the Covenant. You know, Jung said that we should all be moving tabernacles. You know, it has a place that the image side of us is not in time and space. It doesn't exist in time and space, and we don't exist in the eternal realm. But through the philosopher's stone, that's where the two can meet. You know, or this little inner temple that we build. You know, the idea is, and that's where we create the third thing. You know, that's neither eternal nor in time and space. It is sort of a hybrid of the two. But anyway, she has this dream that she was in prison, a dark, gloomy place. She receives a parcel from whom I do not know. Whenever you hear that in a dream, always watch out. I received a parcel from whom I do not know. I live in a house of whom I don't know who owns it, you know, or things like that. But she knew that in the little white box, the little white parcel she got, was a spider. Now, she wasn't sure if it was poisonous or not, but she knew that she must feed it through a hole in the top of the box. She should put a crumb in. And then she heard a voice that said, "The spider is God." So now the prison symbolized—
Spider is what?
God. The spider was God. The prison symbolizes the introversion that was forced upon her, but she doesn't like it. It's prison. She doesn't like it yet. And then she receives a gift from the unconscious, from whom I did not know. The little box with the spider, and then comes the surprising last sentence, the spider is God. And this tells us that the creative kernel at the bottom of the human psyche is nothing more or less than the presence of the divine. You know, it really is the miracle of life. It cannot happen by accident. I mean, it's some magic. It really is. You know, I mean, being alive is just absolutely magical. You really get it. You know, and the divine center. You know, Edinger says, if you don't get it, you haven't awoken yet. I mean, the fact that it's unbelievable. There's no explanation. There are no set of events that you or set of steps that you can lay out to get here. You know, how did it happen? Who cares? You know, in Buddhism, they said you don't ask. You know, everything is tathagata. It's just thus come into the world. You know, the Buddha is thus come into the world. You don't need to know. He's here. He's magical. Just deal with that. Don't worry about the causal aspects. But this divine center spins the consistent thread of fate on which we move. You know, the spider, the kernel of life, the spider is God. That is what the Spider Woman taught the heroine in our story to do. You know, that the creative kernel at the bottom of the human psyche is the presence of the divine, and the divine center spins the constant thread of fate on which we move. And that is what the Spider Woman taught the heroine in our story. And with this help of the thread, she could now return back to earth from heaven and live with that knowledge. But then she does not open her eye. She doesn't take it seriously. And these people who have these fabulous dreams and just, you know, just yawn. Oh, you know, like Jung says, when I tell people the psyche is real, you know, you do have a soul. There is a treasure waiting in the field, buried in the field waiting for you. I mean, this is Jung's words himself. He says, it's like I told you, you have a rattlesnake in your pocket. And you just go, oh, yeah, okay. Well, what's for lunch? Where do we want to eat? You know, I mean, the idea is that you don't take this seriously. And let's say it could be proven by science that within you is a divine voice, and it's not you. And it speaks, and it sends you dreams. And within you is a soul, the intimate friend of that divine being. And it can be proven by science. Would that make any difference to you? I mean, it's sort of, but the idea is too, and Jung said that when you get these images, it puts a moral obligation on you to act, you know. And so the idea of the woman who didn't, she had a moral obligation on her to know that the creative kernel at the bottom of the human psyche is the presence of the divine, and it is the divine. This spider is God. It spins the constant thread on which we move. And with this thread, we can return to the earth. But she, in her case, she didn't go back into time and space and yawn. She wants to live as a spider the rest of her life. So she really didn't return to earth. That happens too. And she says, viewed from the outside, this could mean that she is either near madness, or she said it could just be a mild case of being isolated or odd. But it's the story of a failed shamanistic journey with all its tragic consequences. Anyway, that was the Spider Woman. I left some parts out, but I think we better go to the discussion half. Now, Gary will just go around the room, and I'd love to hear some great Angelique and Denise. Please feel free to share. And Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just, another way to do this too is, does anyone want to lead off? Does somebody have a comment they'd like to make? Otherwise, I guess I'll just kind of go across. Aline, you have some comments for us?
Yes. I really identified with the Spider Woman at first, with the girl who turned into a spider, rather. First, when I heard this Eskimo tale, I couldn't find anything in it for me, at first. I just thought, how strange, But anyway, yeah, the Spider Woman, the girl who turned into a spider, I really thought the head was wonderful myself. I was very attracted to this, And I also thought she should have married the moon god. I mean, that would have been me, you know. The moon god had the power, even if he is a little bit lame and can't actualize anything. And so it's up to her to actualize stuff. And most of the time she falls short of the mark. She doesn't go back to earth. She doesn't open her eyes. She doesn't do as she's told, you know. But my rebellious nature in there, when the father wanted her so badly to marry somebody just because he didn't have a son, to me, that is not a personal enough reason. And so, you know, clearly I have an Oedipus complex with my own father. It's so clear to me. But the Spider Woman as the maternal aspect was bigger than the moon god. That also spoke to me, because my own mother was so distant and so not present, and yet she embodied everything that I wanted to become. And so, yeah, great story. Thank you, everybody. I really love this group. It helps me with my journey.
Comment. I mean, that just made, you know, just kind of tied it all back into the personal. That was just perfect. Kat, do you have a comment?
I loved it, and I take a completely different stance on Maureen from Franz or whatever. I don't actually think it was a bad thing. I think, like, the girl for me is out of touch anyway. She reminds me of a changeling kind of thing, and in lots of ways, the couple are trying to raise something that is not quite like everybody else. And I think in lots of fairy stories where you have a very strong reaction to something, and I think of fairies and things like that because supposedly fairy reactions are just like sort of pure anger. There's no real logic to it. They're just sort of angry, yeah. So the fact that she's angry about the thought of having blokes come to her and everything else, I can kind of see that kind of changeling side to it more than a human girl side to it. The fact then that she falls in love with a head and is very happy, but then the father, well, the father wants her to, you know, marry somebody so they can be taken care of when they're old. I mean, he doesn't, again, it's the same as the handless maiden. He doesn't even equip her with any sort of things to take care of herself or them. Do you see what I mean? So again, it's overlooking of skills and abilities and resources to be able to do for herself, because, you know, they're crippling her in lots of ways. So she falls in love with the head, and the dude sort of the father wounds it in the eye. That for me is the vision and the imagination. Then she goes looking for it and doesn't want anything to do with it, but then comes across the moon god, which I think in some ways it was a form of death in him taking the clothing off of her. And then she's in this space where she's having to learn and reintegrate aspects of herself with the women and the spider and the soul seal skins, or the, you know, and then she's got the choice whether she wants to go down to earth again. And there's that plait, which supposedly in like astral projection and things like that, there is a plait that comes from our bodies, or people seen this luminous plait if we go flying out of our bodies and things like that, supposedly so. And then she gets told what to do to become human again, but then she doesn't open her eyes quick enough, and it's almost like it seems like it's some kind of accident, but I don't actually know whether it is an accident, because we're told there are no accidents, and perhaps she is able to just be fully herself, and whether that's a spider functioning in a way that's all right for her. I think sometimes it's not always about what other people's expectations of us are and how we function. It's how what we're okay with within ourselves. So so that's me. Sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, no, really
anymore.
interesting take. Yeah, no,
The actual tale itself is like Aline said it, I felt it too, is very strange, but yeah, it did. You know, I say every event was so unexpected. It just you know, sort of resonates with you. I mean, it was so like, this is crazy, but it still is. You know, I love it.
Tim, do you have a comment for us?
And this makes a lot of sense to me. I'm curious about, it's so similar to the Handless Maiden, but I'm curious about the culture that it comes from. It seems like the native cultures are a lot less patriarchal. And this story is one that seems to me so true, because women are not allowed in a patriarchal system to live their own lives. And here, you know, it's like expected that, oh, you have to live your life to make me more comfortable. But I want to pass and hear what the women have to say.
Great.
Say just one thing. I Esther Harding said, you know, we mentioned patriarchal and matriarchal. Her theory was this, is that once property was no longer communal, that's when the aspect of ownership of property had an aspect that changed some of the early societies, the way they arranged things. It became more of a power center rather than a mutual, you know, a matrilineal nurturing of the group through everybody's property all belongs to the group. When that it went to a power culture after the, you know, you started. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just a theory, but I like it.
Denise, is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes, Gary, it's Denise. Yeah. I don't know. These stories reminds me of Athena, right? The head. She's the father's favorite. She was born out of Zeus' head, and it's a very, very strong archetype. And also Athena loves to knit, right? Spiders knit. So I don't know, it's a very, very strong archetype, and you can, I don't know, I can feel it when I see it. For example, I can see Ivanka Trump. She's her father's favorite, and that's very, very strong in her. And yeah, you can have some of the other archetypes, but this is I don't know, it's a very difficult to get rid of. I don't know why. I don't know why. And every time I see it, I see this relationship between a father and her daughter is very, very strong. It's very, very strong. And of course, it has its advantages. But of course, mother is missing. I don't know if it comes a time when you want to embrace the mother figure, but it gives you kind of safety to be in the father's realm. That's what I have to say.
She mentions there too that some daughters are fascinated by the father.
Yeah, it's like a fascination, and
some are fascinated by the mother life, and the ones that are more fascinated by the father aspect tend to be a little more separated from life, but that has its advantages, as you say.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yes, of course.
And
yes, of course. It's like more it's easier in a way because everything is very order and you know what to do. but of course you miss a lot of other things. But
Yeah.
it's the way it is.
If we go, well, if we go on with, I thought
you don't get involved in that hunter's way of operating. But she loves nature they love nature and they hate nature. So Athena is not comfortable in that realms. That's not for me. No.
If we go on with the living symbol by Gerhard Adler, it's just an analysis of a living woman. And she is one who was more fascinated by the father realm. And her dreams and visions are just very instructive. And there's so many of them. There's probably 300 or 400 of them that are presented there. And it just shows the progression of her analysis. And also the fact that how did she get from the fact that her animus in her was a controlling devil to a divine provider of meaning, how that transforms in her. And yes, it is interesting, especially now when everyone's measured by IQ and by thinking functions. Crap,
I have a teacher. She was Peru national champion of chess, and she's a pure Athena. She's pure brain, and she has had a very quiet life. I never ever have seen her like distressed or like involved in these emotional storms, and that's quite a relief. Of course.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing. I would just every once in a while we have a session where everybody just kind of discusses their own philosophy. I would love to hear, Denise, you just speak unbounded about whatever it is that is important to you. But we'll schedule one of those soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Talia, do you have a comment?
Is it me? Yes.
You're coming through kind of soft.
Okay, just a second. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, yes, I was thinking about about the moment that actually for the girl it was only one like split second which decided everything. Like it's like, and I was wondering why is it too difficult to open? Like why it's too if it's too difficult, why it's too difficult to open the eyes? And it made me think about about my own like how to say moments of switching from like opening the eyes sometimes when you ignore the reality or just feel lost and don't understand the situation. And like sometimes the internal pressure has to be quite strong to, I don't know, to give up or not to give up. So something like that. And so, yes, that was the moment, like, it's like open or close, like a switch on or off the light. Because I also had a dream, something like similar to where it's a long dream, but I was like, I wanted to switch off the light of the room. Like I wanted to be dark because outside was dark. And yes, and there was another figure which spoke to me like, leave the lights on. This is because the morning will come sooner this way. So I knew it's sense and nonsense in a way, like, and so it made me think about that, like, yeah, like, why is it so difficult to keep the eyes open. And even if I think like I keep my eyes open, am I still like, is it really, am I really conscious and keeping my eyes open, or just, so yeah, I have more questions after this session, I think, than answers, but yes, so thank you.
You know, in The Little Prince, that Exupery, you know, made a big deal about that things happen like that, you know, just from a little bit moment of inattention. I don't know what his real point was, but, you know, he says, like, you're coming into, you know, he's a pilot, you're coming into land on a grassy field, and there's a bunch of sheep on it, you know, and you know, and this actually was what you know, was his own demise as he was flying across the Mediterranean, and something happened. I forget what it was, but he, you know, this instantaneous thing. I mean, it's just a minute. You must remember to open your eyes as soon as you get to the ground, or you can, you know, you can go into the inner world and you can come back, but don't get off your horse. If you get off your horse, you'll turn to ashes immediately. I mean, there's this aspect of, you know, the if you once leave the Grail Castle, you'll never see it again, you know, or those things that come up only once every 20 years, and if you don't see it, it goes right back down. You know, I mean, I don't know what that exactly. Maybe somebody can guess what that means. It's just you must be ready, and you can't sit there dumbly. You have to be alert or something.
I'm not sure. Could I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, fire away.
I'm not sure about that exactly, but while you were speaking, Dalia, I kept thinking of the oracles and the prophets in ancient Greek myths, that they are presented blind, like Tiresias is presented blind because he's capable of seeing into the unconscious. Hence, he has lost the vision of the here and now world in a way, and Oedipus gets blinded also because he starts actually truly seeing the connections of his actions in regards to his fate, in regards to the unconscious effects of his choices. So in ancient Greek tragedy, I would say you stop seeing in the outer world by the moment you start connecting the dots of the inner principles. So sometimes it goes like that. So
James Joyce said, "Shut your eyes and see," you know, and this Maya Deren, who worked with the voodoo in Haiti, you know, would ask the gay day or people, you know, they would wear glasses with one lens knocked out and the other lens just completely black, and she'd ask them why they did that, and they'd say, you know, with the open eye, I see the world. With the marked off eye, I survey the universe. You know, it is the idea of that I have one eye open onto the eternal aspect or something.
yes,
like that.
but also the world mysteries comes from the ancient Greek verb mio, which means I'm closing the eyes. So
Yes.
the initiates had to have their eyes closed in order for the inner visions and inner images to kind of start flowing. It was a practical thing too.
That is one. I'm just saying I'm not good at it, but you know, I try to do visioning, and once I shut my eyes, you know, they come. I mean, I've seen they aren't necessarily meaningful, but they are while you're awake. You know, images. I'm just not at the level where they're providing a narrative yet.
you know, when I go to the symphony, I know that a lot of times I keep my eyes closed because it just, as soon as you close your eyes, it just, everything becomes so much more intense. Whereas if your eyes are open, you know, there's just this mental aspect that overlays everything that shuts down a lot of your perception.
That's
so
very true. I think that's it.
And so, you know, that perception, but, you know, but in the story, it's the matter of, you know, once you're aware that the situation has changed, now you have to open your eyes and acknowledge it.
In night, you know, night, you know, the fairest of my daughters, you know, there's this wonderful poem, you know, you know, and Nietzsche says, in night, all fountains speak louder, and my heart is a fountain. You know, the idea is at night, there is an aspect in this, you know, in the clear light of day. You know, I mean, you know, in the storytellers in Ireland would not tell any story until after Samhain. I always mispronounce that, after the harvest, and after the sun had went down. You know, and the idea is that at that point, you've reached the thin place, okay, where heaven and earth are only 3 feet apart, you know, and that does not happen there's not a thin place at noon necessarily.
Which I like to add something.
Yeah.
When there's two ways of looking in the world, as I've found out with my walking meditations. So I have my eyes open, right? Clearly, if I'm walking down the street and you're looking and just really trying to receive information. But if you walk with let the world just come to you, like when you're driving, it just comes through the windscreen, it comes to you, you receive. It's a whole nother way for me of being in the world with my eyes open.
You know, change the focus of the eyes. You know, the kingdom of the Father is spread up on the earth, but we don't see it. You know, change your focus. But we better make sure Angelique and Azine and
yeah, Azine, would you like to go ahead?
Diane.
Hello, everyone. So I just I still haven't got a good grip on the story. I haven't digested it. But reading the story, and I was watching a movie a couple of nights ago with it was about the Paris's judgment, the golden apple and stuff. So I realized that a lot of the stuff that we are reading as myths, they might just be dreams. Like I thought that Paris's judgment should be someone's dream, you know? And this story as well, like you see these very abstract images, and to me it's close to dream mind. So it might be somebody dreamed this stuff and they put it on written words, I don't know. But this story definitely feels like a dream to me. The head that this girl becomes a head. It reminded me of Jung when he talks about animus possession, and he says that animus can become like a cocoon around a woman and separates her from the world and gives her just like principles and ideas, fixed ideas and opinions, you know, about things that they really don't mean anything in her reality, but they're just separate her from the world. And to me, this woman is a kind of, she weaves her own world, and she gets trapped in it, in the world that she created around herself. And I think a lot of intellectuals do that. We create a world around ourselves and separate ourselves from the world. That's why it's called the Moon Palace. I was listening to Martin Shaw. He has 2 books that are related to this myth, and he's talking about the Moon Palace, and he says that heartbreak can get you there if you're heartbroken. And in this story also we see that the boy, the young man rejects her, and she's basically heartbroken, and that's why she wants to go to a higher place. Like we do this when we are heartbroken. We may listen to music, we may go to a spiritual retreat of some sort, and we want to separate ourselves from the pain of the reality and what happened to us. So she's definitely in the Moon Palace. And when she goes to this, she's moving upwards. She doesn't know how she's doing it, but she goes there like she's floating and flying. And she gets to this lid with a hole in it. And when she passes through the hole, there's another world. There's a land, there's sky, and there's air, and she's there, you know. So I think that's upper world. It's the upper world. And I have a lot of questions about the difference between upper world and underworld. But I think with underworld, we see Persephone, the earth opens up and she falls into the earth, right? She's abducted by Hades. And that character, the kayak man, the hole is different when she's going up. So she tries and she swings and she jumps and get that hole, and she passes through it. And the kayak man reminds me of what is the name? The guy who rows in a boat in the dead land down underworld.
The river Styx.
Sharon.
Yeah, Sharon.
Yeah. The kayak man reminds me of that character. It's very like that. And this position, right hand and left hand, I've seen it. I have an image. This is actually what we used to do in healing, that you receive the energy and you give it back to the earth. And you're kind of a transformer, or you're middling between sky and earth. And I have an image that shows a lot of these gods, like Horus and Hermes, a lot of these guys in this position. There's a sculpture in San Jose, and they have this great Egyptian museum and Rosicrucian library. There's a statue of Pythagoras. Pythagoras, that it means, they say it means as above, so below. So that's the motto of alchemy. It's this reflection, and it's really magical. When this guy does this, everything goes to her, she gets naked. It reminds me again of Inanna, right? When she gets rid of everything and go through these 5 steps of initiation, and she's naked and she's initiated to upper world, you know. Also with the father figure, the father expects this girl to do something. This is what Denise just said about Athena. And patriarchy, Zeus is just a head, and all patriarchy is just a head. So disconnected from the body and just this big head. But the father-daughter relationship is built on father's expectations of the daughter. If she is doing well, she's doing what the father wants, he gives her gifts, like he gives Athena some gifts, like the helmet, the winged helmet and stuff. But if she does not obey, which in this story, I think this is happening, the whole idea of head becomes something possessive. Like she's not receiving the gift from the father because she's not following the templates. And the first sentence that Franz started the interpretation of this story is that she's not normal, she's different, and these stories don't end well. And yeah, we can say she's living her own life, as Kat said, but in general, it's not a happy ending. It's not happy ending. And this is not because she made a mistake. Most of the times we think that if we make the right decisions, we will be okay, or we'll be awarded. But in many occasions, when you make the right decisions that is related to your inner being and being truthful and authentic, you get punished. That's the reality. And many of the stories shows that. And Franz talks about it in the Sleeping Beauty, that punishment and being cursed and spilled on is not always our fault. So I'm still working on this story. I still can't say that I got it. It's a little bit abstract to me, but I relate to it. I identify with it, but I still haven't got it yet.
Thank you, Azine. That was beautiful.
Yeah, you've given me a lot to think about for sure.
And if we can at some point talk about or discuss upper world and underworld, that's a big question for me.
Diane, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, first of all, I just want to express appreciation. And, you know, I'm so blessed to be in this group because I'm learning so much. And I want to thank you, Gary, for the opening that hour meditation. It's the first time I participated, and that was really wonderful. I've done Qigong before in the past, but it's been a long time, and that was an exceptionally good sequence, I think. But then the cello, oh my gosh, that just was so needed for me. You know, the guilt and the grief, just perfect. And when I close my eyes, you know, we're talking a lot about images, but listening to that music and closing my eyes, I really had a lot of images, like, you know, coming like a flower opening and things growing and moving, and literally uplifting for me, literally.
Great.
And then about the fairy tale, I came in late on this, and so I haven't actually read it. I've only heard all of your comments, but it's so interesting to have such a different cultural fairy tale. And, you know, the fact that it's almost a reversal of the masculine and feminine too. And then your comments, Craig, about in Egypt and so forth. That is so broadening to have that, you know, cultural difference, that globally cultural difference. And reading, so I have started reading the Women's Mysteries. And there, Esther Harding talks about how initially the god, when it was a maternal society, a matriarchal society, the moon was the deity, the highest deity. And, you know, how, and Denise's comments on the fact that, you know, the moon is always whole. It's only from our own perspective. brings in also what Esther Harding was talking about, how we can really separate the subjective from the objective. If we can recognize the subjective, the unconsciousness of the subjective, that's the more truly scientific method, because we remove the subjective from the object. And so I'm really looking forward to continuing with that book as well. And yeah, as regards Azine's comment, I think that that's true even of men, that when you really reveal yourself, you're most commonly punished for it, but it's even more true for women, certainly. So I'm just learning so much. Thank you all.
I love your comment on when you recognize, you know, the unconsciousness of the subjective. That was, and I've just started reading that as well, and that brought it back.
We want to hear it from Angelique. I just,
and Camilla too.
Yeah, and Camilla. But I was just going to say that there's this one, that when the sun god was, according to Harding, was most often put in by force, you know, sort of chilling.
Yeah, let's go with Camilla next, and then we'll go to Angelique.
Yes, hello. It's been a long time since I've been here, but I look forward to participate a bit more frequently this year. It's my plan anyway. I also had a bit of a misunderstanding. I thought, because I'm in Sweden, so there's a time gap. And so I came in late today. I didn't realize that you started at, what is my 5 o'clock. So I'll know this next time. I read the story. I read some of the Esther Harding book, and I'm also reading again this Mindell book, which is very interesting, I think, in terms of both the fairy tale, but also just how we think psyche, I think. And when I sit and listen to all your amazing thoughts and ponderings, I came to think about, in a way, that one spoke about upper body and lower body, but I thought about the body world and the sort of mental world. And it was as if that sort of incident, she is very in love with this head, but it's almost as if it's her own animus she's having in a relationship with, and the father becomes jealous of this and kills it off. And this is like the traumatic event. And the traumatic event then, from there on, we are just seeing the woman in her inner psyche going through, I suppose, the death first of the animus figure, but then also because he's become a cyclop almost. So he's not who he was. And then you follow her into sort of this mental space where things are inverted. The masculine is feminine, the death is alive. You know, there's different sort of oppositions there that I was thinking of. And then I was thinking about this moment of opening. Well, when I have this moment of closing my eyes to events that are painful, it's like I close off and it's like it's a moment, and I just sort of close off and I react. It's like I make a space around myself where this other situation isn't there, and it's for the other person, I'm quite sure, or the other people, this seems really weird and not particularly conducive to anything for them. But for me, it becomes a possibility of experiencing what is happening, but without enacting a projection, either myself or a traumatic event or the other's projection, whatever's going on here. And it means that, as someone was speaking about, closing the eyes inwardly to try and get to understand. And so I was thinking really that her life starts where she isn't opening the eyes back on the earth. but we're not following it from there. And that's why it seems so horrendous and so sad, as if she's just this spider. But in reality, I think that is probably where the psyche is instigated and becomes full, and her life is really starting. I don't know if this makes sense, but
No,
yeah.
that was a beautiful observation. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm done, so
Okay.
Thank you.
Angelique?
Thank you. Unfortunately, I have not read the story. I have only listened to your presentation today, so I can't say much about it. But when Denise talked about Athena, quite intuitively, I was reminded of the story, the punishment of Arachne, which means spider, by Athena. So the word Arachne means spider, and she was weaving. She was very, very proud of her weaving, and she was so proud that she said, "I am better in weaving than even the goddess." So Athena punished her. So while Denise was speaking, punished her to become this, this insect, and to kind of compulsively weave all her life, her net. And while I was listening to Denise, quite synchronistically, I couldn't help but think that Athena is a feminine archetype that becomes so prominent in ancient Greece when Socrates, as you said, Craig, and all the rational philosophers really were starting to ground the ancient Greek civilization into a much more philosophy, unconscious deprived realm. Socrates was eager to say, here are the mysteries. Philosophy is my Eleusis, so everything was starting slowly, in my view, to be taken so much more literally, and the symbolic was losing its power, its grip on the world. And well, very, very personally, I feel that became part of the reasons the ancient Greek civilization, started to fall, because their so powerful archetypal symbols stopped being seen and experienced as symbolic. So Arachne was doing something with her hands, quite sensation, as you described it, Craig, whereas Athena was, as you said, Denise, the daughter of her father, the proud, quite dry, virgin aspect of the feminine that came to sort of overpower the other chthonic, so far, Greek goddesses, almost made them disappear in the temples. They were put aside because Athena, in her wisdom, but also her feeling deprived aspect of the feminine goddess was starting to diminish. We look at the archetypal images in an evolving way, because in my view, they are so alive. They are very vibrant. So when I am studying the ancient Greek, myths, they are so alive that they shift through time. And then I get a feeling, the perfume of how people were experiencing the feminine through the eons. And it was starting to shift so dramatically and powerfully. Athena was a goddess worshipped in great power and through gold, etc., in excess when the wars were taking place. So, it was a different archetypal image of the feminine than Hecate or the triple goddess or Demeter or even Aphrodite, both in her, sexual or Olympic, if you like, less materialistic, less sensual aspects. So very interesting then, that spider with the spider you mentioned in Marie-Louise von Franz fairy tale. So thank you. I have to go back to the story. Thank you
Well,
very
that
much.
was very
Yeah.
interesting.
Angelica, in a couple of weeks, maybe I think it'd probably be closer to February. We're just going to open it up to everybody. I'd like to hear you tell your story, and Denise and everybody. Let's because I can't. You're just teasing us with this enthusiasm and knowledge. Yeah, it's beautiful.
The feeling of the archetype through time, and sensing the perfume. I just love the images.
Yeah. Well,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Angelique. I'm really looking forward to Denise and everybody and Azine. We got some real pros here. So anyway, Dawn, Dawn doesn't usually want to speak, but is there anybody else we missed?
Or anyone else that has any additional comments?
Yeah, or any additional comments? Thoughts? Well, if not, we'll next time we'll just we'll try to finish. There's only 8, 9, 10, and 11 lectures, so there I don't know, it's 40, 50 pages. So we'll just go through it, just because intuitives never want to finish anything. They need to be forced to finish up what they started. So we'll finish this book. Plus, there's this next one on the 7 swans, or it's the 6 swans and the 7 ravens. Where the girl has to go in and save these sort of animus figures. The analysis von Franz does is a lot more typical of our dreams, I think, and I think that we'll get a lot out of it. So anyway, breathtaking.
So we're still gonna continue with von Franz fairy tales.
Yeah,
now?
just for about 3 sessions, and then we'll go in with the moon mysteries, the Esther Harding.
Where do you have the PDF for that?
Yes,
what's the name of it?
It is The Feminine in Fairy Tales, and it'll be lecture 8, and maybe lecture 9 is the final part of the Spiderwebism on the line. Yeah, I will send it out. Did everybody put their email in or everybody's on the email list, right? Yeah, okay, great. Well, I will send it out again, Diane, and it's just lecture. We got 8, 10, 9, 10, and 11. It's about 40, 50 pages. Okay. All right. Well, everybody have a great New Year's, and we'll see you next time. Okay. Thank you. Very breathtakingly beautiful.
Good Sunday.
Thank you.
Bye,
see you
guys.
next week. Bye.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.